What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy United Deluxe Class Infernac Universe Shards. Another really cool take on that old Rock Lords concept. You know, I'm always a big fan of when Hasbro kind of brings some of these unique characters to the forefront of the main line, and I really think Shard is a prime example of that because design-wise, he is looking so freaking cool, and in some ways, I'm kind of getting amazing Spino Waspinator vibes from his design. So, as we check out the details, the head sculpt is looking super cool, and I'm also loving the return of the light piping. You know, this has been used so damn well, and unlike Magnius, where he was kind of molten rock inspired, Shard appears to be slightly more crystal-like in his design. So visually, I think it's way more interesting. I mean, check out the paint details for the chest piece. I'm also loving the return of kind of the hollow spark chamber that once again we did see included with Magnius. It's making me think, what exactly powerizes these armorizers, and are they good guys or are they bad guys? I also think the Shin design too is super nicely detailed. I love these kind of shards of rock sticking out to the sides, although from some angles they do come across as being slightly bushy-like because he has been primarily cast in green plastic, but still such a really cool design. And as we spin him around here to the back, the only real big issue that I take with him would be kind of the placement of the tail rotor. Now, he is an armorizer, so the whole idea of him is to kind of be broken apart, used as weapons for other Transformers, so you would think that maybe it would be a given for this to kind of have a cut so that you could remove it and turn it into a full-blown proper sword, although instead they've left it as a permanent fixture, which I think is such a shame because from a design perspective it unfortunately does kind of stick out like a sore thumb, and I think there is a lot of wasted potential here. That would have made for a pretty banging handheld weapon, but besides that, still a really strong design. You know, alongside some of the other armorizers we've so far seen released, not only is this guy an absolute blast to mess around with, but visually, design-wise, he is by far one of the most unique figures so far to be released for Legacy. And when it comes to weaponry, another big improvement in comparison to Magnius would be that Shard includes a shed ton. So up first we have a total of 4 rotor blades, which I guess in this form can kind of transform into swords, although unfortunately you would kind of think that maybe these could be used as handheld weapons, but they can't due to Hasbro kind of sculpting this additional tab, which pretty much prevents it from being used in a traditional sense. Instead they have to kind of act as wrist blades, which while still look pretty cool, I won't lie to you guys, it would have been way nicer had these also been able to be used as a proper full-blown handheld weapon. But in addition to those, he is also packing kind of the intakes, or I guess you could say the boosters of the helicopter mode. And once again, these have been so nicely detailed and painted. I mean, check out the internal detail. That is definitely looking kind of sick. And because he is an armorizer, you can technically Evo fusion some of these accessories together to create for some pretty bonkers combinations. Now, it is here where I can kind of see as to why they did add this additional notch, pretty much to keep a much more secure connection when you do combine it with the turbine, although I won't lie to you guys, I kind of think that circular port just by itself would have been more than adequate. But anyway, you are going to want to slap this bad boy here into the center. We can then whack out a second rotor blade and smack it here into the top. Repeat the same steps for the second set and you have 2 pretty savage looking bayonets. Or alternatively, you can totally combine the pair to transform them into a full-blown crossbow, which honestly I think is looking brutal in its design, and once again is a massive step up weaponry-wise in comparison to Magnius. So, to be honest, I just want to know the backstory about these armorizers. You know, their designs are so unique. I want to know whether or not they are good or are they bad, and who exactly is their ruler? You know, who commands these guys? Are they independent creatures? Are they ruled by a higher power? I really want to know more about these because, as I said, design-wise, they are so interesting. So, when it comes to posability, despite most of his limbs being able to be turned into their own individual weapons, he is definitely packing a punch when it does come to articulation. So, to begin with, the head is on a swivel. This can pretty much rotate full-blown Exorcist style. The same could be said here for the shoulders, so these can rotate with no issues. They will then kick out to the sides. In addition to that, there is a bicep cut, an elbow bend, and even a wrist swivel. Despite him not using it for transformation, there is even a pretty decent waist joint, but one thing that you can totally make use of would be the transformation joint to technically get a fake ab crunch, which honestly I have found to be super effective, especially when recreating the iconic superhero landing pose. So I thought that was kind of cool. When it comes here to the hips, these will kick forwards. They will then bend here at the knee, roughly to 90. You can also make use out of kind of the knee swivel, so that I guess acts as a thigh swivel, pretty decent range. They will then kick back roughly to that far. They can also kick out to the side, so even that is pretty dynamic. And then finally, when it comes here to the ankles, in addition to rocking looking down and even forwards, they can also tilt side to side in both directions, which is brilliant, especially when getting this guy into an awesome running pose. So despite being an armorizer, you know, the whole feature of him being able to be broken apart doesn't in any way obstruct the articulation. This guy's definitely super dynamic, but as you guys all know, to see what he is truly capable of, the moves which he can pull off on the Infernac universe, we have to put him through the pose test. So, comparison time. On the right hand side, here we have the Infernac universe, Magnius, and so far I am loving how distinct these guys are from each other. With some of the Legacy Evo Fusion Junkions, whilst for the most part they were all distinct characters, they all had very similar design traits, whereas that is not the case at all with some of these Infernac universe figures. You know, I really am loving how individual they all are, and as I mentioned previously, I would love to see way more of these guys in the Legacy United lineup. Here is how he stacks up alongside what was originally the second Evo Fusion Junkion, the Legacy Crash Bar, Legacy United Cyberverse Universe Windblade, Infernac Universe Core Class Boulder Crash, which I think right now has to have the coolest deco out of all of the Infernacons. I really loved that kind of internal magma veining effect, and it's something which honestly I wouldn't mind seeing kind of translated into either a Deluxe or a Voyager class armorizer. Here is how he stacks up alongside the last time I believe we saw a full-blown Deluxe helicopter, that being the Transformers Siege Spinister, Studio Series 86 Voyager class Ironhide, and then finally, no size comparison segment would be complete without the absolute GOAT, the Earthrise Optimus Prime. So, when it comes to transformation, seriously, as much of a blast as what we did see originally from the Infernac universe, Magnius. So, for the first step, you are going to want to take the foot and hinge this here all the way down, do the same here for this side. Then what you'll do is take the knee joint and rotate so that the inside part of the leg is now facing forward. So, do the same here for the next leg. Then what we can do is combine these here directly down the middle and make sure that you also give a good old squeeze to the very tip of the feet, just like this. Then for the next step, we can take a hold of the bicep. Now the aim of the game this time round is to pretty much rotate this so that the port is facing inwards. So swivel this here all of the way around, do exactly the same here for this side, so spin that piece there around. Then for the next step, you are going to want to take the shoulders and detach them away from the chest piece. So originally they are locked in via these slots and tabs. Just completely free these pieces here up. That will then allow it so that you can take what will become the windshield of the helicopter mode, extend this here forwards. That will then detach it away from this transformation hinge joint, and then what we can do is take the head and pretty much feed it underneath this section. So snap that there into place. Then for the next step, you are going to want to make use out of kind of the fake ab crunch which I showcased previously. So just attach that, swing this piece here all the way down, and then for the next step you must make sure that you grab a hold of the tail rotor and completely straighten it out. Now as we check out the arms, there is this little tab here which is pretty much going to slide into a groove which is created out of the mushroom peg of the bicep. So let's just snap that there into place. Then what we can do is slide these up. Now this tiny little slot is going to snap itself into that tab, so let's just feed that there all the way through until it does peg into place. Spin around here to this side and do the same. So once again, line that bicep up with that tab. What we can then do is take a hold of the shoulder joint and slide this here all the way inside once again until it does click into place. Then you are going to want to take this double hinge joint, pretty much slide it here to the back, and then there are a variety of tabs and slots here on the base which are going to peg into pretty much what was originally the chest unit. So just snap all of this here into place exactly like that. For some finishing touches, we can then whack back out the boosters. These are going to very nicely slide into the ports that were originally on the sides of the forearms. Do exactly the same here for this side, and for one final super finishing touch, you will want to attach all of the rotor blades into the center of the helicopter. So here is one that I made previously. This is exactly how all of them should line up. So right now, definitely looking super awesome. And bang! Here we have Shard fully transformed into his pretty awesome Rockcopter alt mode. Now this is one of the very rare instances where I do find myself preferring the look of the vehicle mode over the robot mode, and the robot mode looked sharp. So as we check out the details, I'd argue that kind of rock-like texture can be seen even better in vehicle mode than it could in robot mode. This guy has literally been sculpted front side to back, which is looking brilliant. As we check him out here from the underside, there is literally zero undercarriage kibble. This is one incredibly clean helicopter. I also love that kind of gem-like detail, which you can see here for the cockpit. That is looking seriously awesome. The propellers too make for a very convincing rotor blade, which can spin like an absolute dream, so that's really sweet. And even the boosters are blast effect compatible, so if you wanted these to kind of act as his main form of firepower in this mode, then I think he's going to look pretty savage, kind of turbocharging through that multiversal portal into the Legacy universe. So it really is just a straight 10 out of 10 when it comes to a vehicle mode. What a banging looking figure, and as I mentioned previously, we need to see way more of these Rock Lords introduced for Legacy, because I think they have to be some of the most interesting designs which we have so far seen for the Legacy United mainline. So, now let's turn to the biggest gimmick of these armorizers, how they can actually be used to armorize other Transformers. So, to begin with, both of the shoulders can be completely detached. So, you can take these bad boys here and set them right off to the sides. The next limbs which can be removed would pretty much be from the knee downwards. So, we can slide this joint here clean off, do the same here for this side. So, to be honest, I think this is way better designs in comparison to Magnius, because you were pretty much left with a pointless skeleton which you really couldn't do much with. So, it's pretty cool how the entire limb can be then removed, but unfortunately there is nothing at all that you can do with the torso, which I think is a shame. You know, in some ways I really wish they could have thrown it back to the Transformer Siege days, where the torso of the weaponizer could also be used as a weapon, because this pretty much is a useless chunk, and because once again it does have this kind of massive rotor blade sticking out to the side, I think it would have made for a pretty awesome kind of sword slash shield like weapon. But yeah, we are pretty much just going to want to set this here off to the side. You are then going to want to whack back out the lower part of the leg, because even the shin guards of these here can also be removed, which does reveal some pretty sweet internal detail. For this specific combination, you are once again going to want to combine both the boosters and the propeller blades, exactly as I showcased previously, into these two pretty awesome bayonet weapons. And now that you've pretty much blown Shard to bits, now is where you can really begin to weaponize him up with other Transformers. So here I have the G1 Universe Autobot Gears, and this here is one out of many combinations that you can kind of get out of this guy. So for example, I have decided to fully transform those bayonet weapons into a full-blown jetpack. Honestly, I think this looks really sweet. I love the way the legs kind of transform into this massive spear-like weapon, and the instructions do mention about how you can take the shin pads and kind of attach them onto the side of the legs of Gears. Although I find the post to be just a little too small for the port, so instead I like to smack them here onto the soles of the feet. Because we're dealing with Rock Lords, you know, volcanic like creatures, it would totally make sense that Gears would kind of want to protect his feet from the molten rock. So I actually think this is a really cool combination, and once again I do think when it comes to an armorizer, Shard is way more successful and a lot more enjoyable to kind of armorize with other Transformers in comparison to what we did see from Magnius. So, when it comes to comparisons for vehicle mode, once again, we have the Transformers Siege Spinister, who I think is probably the best one to kind of start off with, because as I mentioned previously, I do believe he was the last kind of full-blown helicopter deluxe class that we saw for the mainline. So, in terms of scale, as you can see, when it comes to length in particular, I believe they are pretty much spot on to each other, and can I just take a second to tell you guys how much I love helicopter Transformers. Spinister was by far one of my favourite figures to be released as part of Transformers Siege, and the helicopter mode definitely had something to do with it, and I think the same goes here for Shard. I would love more than anything to see more helicopters introduced into Transformers, because I believe there has been roughly 6 or 5 years between kind of the last time we saw a helicopter to now Shard. We need way more of these guys in the mainline, but in terms of which helicopter is better, honestly, I think I'm edging slightly more towards Shard. You guys let me know down below, out of the two, which is the one you guys prefer. Throwing it back to his Infernac Universe brother, here we have Deluxe Magnius. So, as I mentioned when it came round to the robot comparisons, I am loving how distinct these Infernac Universe characters are. We've seen a ground-based vehicle, we've seen an air-based vehicle. I would love for the next armorizer to be sea-based. That would be really cool, but these are roughly how these two size up alongside one another. Here we have the core class Infernac Universe Boulder Crash, which, as I mentioned previously, I think has definitely my favourite colour scheme today. How brilliant would it be to kind of see this magma red veining effect translated here into Shard? I definitely would pick up a repaint of this guy in a heartbeat, and there is a reason why he is so good, and it's definitely because I think Hasbro have plans to retool this into maybe another Armorizer in the future. Here for a general size comparison, here is the Cyberverse Universe Windblade, so 2 air-based vehicles released as part of the Legacy United lineup, so in terms of size, very, very similar. To be honest, I actually think these scale pretty decently stacked up against each other. And then finally, we have Earthrise Optimus Prime, so once again, definitely a pretty decent deluxe to Voyager ratio. I think Shard is looking pretty banging stacked up alongside this OG G1 flat-nosed truck. And so, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Legacy United Infernac Universe Shard. Overall, as I mentioned right at the very beginning of the video, I love it when Hasbro introduce brand new unique characters, and Shard's robot design is 95% perfect. The only thing really letting it down for myself once again would kind of be that tail rotor. I really wish that because he is an Armorizer, that could have been a removable weapon. It would have been sick had that kind of transformed into a proper full-blown sword, but besides that, robot mode is a clear 10 out of 10. I also love the helicopter mode, you know, I think that is pretty much 100% perfect, fantastic details, great paintwork, and it is just awesome to see more helicopter Transformers injected into the main line. I also really like how for the most part this guy can be broken apart and used to armorize other Transformers, specifically when it comes to the legs. You know, they are way better designed in my opinion in comparison to what we did see from Magnius. It is just such a shame that once again the torso is pretty much useless. So going forwards, I'm really hoping that they can kind of adapt what we did originally see as part of the Transformers Siege toy line, where the main body too could also be converted into kind of a full-blown weapon. But if you were a fan of the Junkions, you liked the previous Infernac Universe characters, then I think you are really going to like Shard. So I would love to get your guys' thoughts down below. What do you think of Shard? And until my next video, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Transform and roll out!